In 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1 to 4, it reads very seriously for those who are going to be alive at the very close of the age. It says, "This know also, that in the last days, perilous," and the word perilous means dangerous, "time shall come. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents," and we've seen that become rampant in the United States today, "unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good." And notice the next word, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God. The word traitor here could never be more in use than today, because there have been those who have infiltrated into the government of the United States, our precious land in which we live, the land that we say God blessed us with, and the land which God has given us the prosperity which no other nation has ever received in the history of mankind. And we didn't do it ourselves, but it was given to us as an inheritance because of the obedience of those who went before us, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. And so those things that we have received have been ours by inheritance. Of course, God uses the skill that we have so that mixed with His blessing, we could produce all of the wonders that we've seen in this country. But the Bible does tell us that there will be those who will not appreciate it. They will seek further things. It's called world government. There will be those who are under the influence of another spirit, not the Holy Spirit of God, but a spirit by which evil comes. It is manifest all over the world, and it is now being manifest more than ever in this precious United States of America. At the early part of the 20th century, there were men who began to infiltrate into the government. I've preached about it many times and shown that there are those who are infiltrating even today. But there are some things in history that are needed to be pointed out so that we can understand that there is a real conspiracy. It is not a theory. A theory means we guess, maybe, perhaps. But when you have mountains and thousands of tons of evidence, then it is no longer a theory, it is a fact. And so way back in the 1930s, a man was elected, actually the 20s, but went on into the 30s as President of the United States. His name was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He signed an executive order issued April 5th, 1933, that all persons were required to deliver on or before May 1st, 1933, all gold coin, gold bullion, and gold certificates to the Federal Reserve System. Now, why is this important? It's very important because according to a radio statement that was given out, the new national ID driver's license that had been approved 100-0 by the Senate, and if every state in the United States accepts it, that's fine as far as the federal government is concerned. But if not, they are making it go through the Federal Reserve banking system. And if you and I do not take that new driver's license as an identification, that means we will be outside the system. Now, what does this mean to you and me? What is the Federal Reserve System? Way back there when this executive order was given, There was a $10,000 penalty if you didn't meet the deadline in getting your gold certificates and so on into the Federal Reserve System. By virtue of the authority that was invested in Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he reactivated the October 6, 1917 National Emergency Act in banking. Now, the National Emergency Act came about because of the war, World War I. It was never eliminated. So effectively, as we will see as I progress, the Constitution that guarantees our freedom has been eliminated. And we are under a different form of government by the receivers of this country. Receivers mean automatically that a nation has become bankrupt. Whoever it was that held the notes for that bankruptcy, they took care of the receivership, and everything began to belong to them. So they could change the form of government from a republican form that guaranteed our rights under the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. They could change it to a socialistic, fascist form of government. But in order not to alarm the population who still had handguns and so on because of the Second Amendment, they did not tell that there was going to be a transfer of government form in this country. And when it did take place, it would be gradual, little by little, until it became so legal that no one would be able to stand up against it. So it was that everybody had to deliver their gold by May 1st, 1934, because the act was signed officially and went into force, and the bankruptcy of the United States was declared March 9th, 1933. Here's what the results of all of this has become. This was placed in the Congressional Record of the United States by Congressman James Beck in 1933. Here's what he said. I think of all the damnable heresies that have ever been suggested in connection with the Constitution, the doctrine of emergency is the worst. It means that when Congress declares an emergency, there is no Constitution. This means it's death. But the Constitution of the United States, as a restraining influence in keeping the federal government within the carefully prescribed channels of power, is moribund, which means dying. That was in 1933. If not dead already. We are witnessing its death agonies. For when this bill becomes law, and it did, if unhappily it becomes law, there is no longer any workable Constitution to keep the Congress within the limits of its constitutional powers. End of quote. Have we seen a Congress that can delegate money, billions upon billions of dollars? Under the gold standard, you could not have more money in circulation than the gold to back it. But now, without the gold standard, they can print billions and trillions of dollars. They can fight their wars all over the world. They can have their socialized programs inside of America, and it's just paper dollars. And every time they print more, inflation comes. A house that in 1962, 3-bedroom, 2-car garage in Dallas, Texas, cost $12,250. Today, it's about $150,000. All because of inflation. Can we believe that the War Powers Act that used to cover up a bankruptcy on March 9th, 1933? And what are the results of it? What Mr. Beck said to the Congress of the United States that day and put it in the Congressional Record has stayed there for all of these years. Why was the Federal Reserve banking system passed into law to begin with, because it has usurped the powers of the Congress of the United States. At one time, there was the United States Bank. It was controlled and owned by the government of the United States, but no longer. With the Federal Reserve Act that was passed in 1913, now it became possible for foreigners who came into this country to set up a banking system where they could print money at about 2 cents per bill. It didn't matter if it was a $1 bill, a $5 bill, a $20 or a $100 or a $10,000 bill. It only cost them for the paper and the printing. Then they would send the message to the Treasury Department, and the Treasury Department would then borrow that money from a banking system at interest. When we created, according to the Constitution, our own money, Congress was the only entity that had a right to create money and then set the value. But when we shelved the Constitution and no longer made it workable, the Federal Reserve System then became the banker for the land. And within just a few short years, from 1913 to 1933, the United States of America became a bankrupt nation. Do we believe that in the year 2005? What if someone stood up in the Congress of the United States, as they do every single year, and make statements as to who now owns this country? Owns the country. They own you and me and everything in it. Has it ever happened before? And if it happened, would that congressman go scot-free? Or would they be pressure to bear upon that person and upon the officials of the government to put that person in jail so they could silence him and not awaken the American people to the truth? This is what was placed in the Congressional Record of the United States as it was spoken on the House floor by Representative James Traficant, Jr. of Ohio. This is found, and it was delivered March 17th, 1993, volume 33, page H 1303. Quote, Mr. Speaker, we are here now in Chapter 11. Anybody that knows anything about bankruptcy knows that is the bankruptcy code. Members of Congress are official trustees presiding over the greatest reorganization of any bankrupt entity in the world, the United States government. We're setting forth, hopefully, a blueprint for our future. There are some who say it's a coroner's report that will lead to our demise. It is an established fact that the United States federal government has been dissolved by the Emergency Banking Act, March 9th, 1933. 48 Statute 1, Public Law 89-719, declared by President Roosevelt. Can we understand what he said here? And this was 1993. America is bankrupt. How did it become bankrupt? The Bible said in the last days there would be traitors. Traitors to governments. Mr. Traficant went on and said that the United States government exists in name only. Not that we have the Constitution to work from anymore. He went on to say the receivers of the United States bankruptcy are the international bankers by the United Nations, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund. All United States officials Officials and departments are now operating within a de facto, which means, if you look it up in Black's Law Dictionary, it means illegal status, in name only under the emergency war powers. With the Constitution Republican form of government now dissolved, the receivers of the bankruptcy have adopted a new form of government for the United States. Have you ever wondered why it says in the Pledge of Allegiance that we pledge allegiance to the American flag and to the republic for which it stands? And yet on the nightly news, all they talk about is democracy. That's a different form of government altogether. It's the worst form of government in the history of mankind, and it always goes into anarchy and socialism within 50 years. But he said our government has adopted a new form. This new form of government is known as a democracy, being an established social communist order under a new governor for America. This act was instituted and established by transferring and or placing the office of the Secretary of Treasury to that of the governor of the International Monetary Fund. Then, within this congressional record message, he goes on and repeats the statutes and so on. So is America under siege to be destroyed and have a different form of government? Certainly not the government that I grew up within. Remember, the Federal Reserve System is called international bankers. There are 8 banking houses, 4 from foreign lands and 4 from the United States, but they immigrated to this country for the purpose of creating a centralized bank in this country. And now they have control of the money system. They have bankrupted us, and now they control the country in secret. There was a very brave man who decided that he was going to do something about this, and he was not going to allow the Federal Reserve System to continue into existence. His name was President John F. Kennedy. He wanted to do something about the Federal Reserve System and its hold over the American people. So on June 4th, 1963, a virtually unknown presidential decree called Executive Order number 11,110 was signed with the authority to basically strip the Federal Reserve banking system of its money loaning power in the United States, and the United States government having to pay interest on all money that was put into circulation by that system. To be exact, you can take any one of your bills in your wallet, your purse, and you can look on the back and it'll say Federal Reserve System. It does not say that you can redeem it for gold or silver. I took a $100 gold certificate, or silver certificate, to the Federal Reserve Bank in St. Louis, Missouri, asked them for the silver. They just looked at me. We don't give out silver or gold for money anymore. It's fiat money. It has no value except 2 cents to print it. If it's accepted by the population, they can just print more and more, and eventually people go bankrupt because every single dollar that goes into circulation, there must be a loan. Somebody must get a loan to buy a car, to buy a house, to buy a boat. And when the money goes into circulation, they pay interest. If nobody takes a loan and people are paying back their loans, all the money dries up into circulation. Then you have depression. This is what's been going on in America, and that's why the Great Depression occurred, to bankrupt America. With a stroke of a pen, President Kennedy declared that the privately owned Federal Reserve Bank would soon be going out of business. There was a group called the Christian Law Fellowship, did exhaustive research in the Federal Registry and in the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., to find out if this executive order 11,110 was still in existence, and it is still valid. It has never been repudiated. So when John Fitzgerald Kennedy signed that, he made enemies in high places. It just so happens the Federal Reserve also has their stock tied up in other corporations. It's called the Military Industrial Complex. Boeing and all the others that make our jet fighters, our tanks. In other words, since the Federal Reserve System came into being, America became a warmongering nation. The people didn't have anything to do with it. The Federal Reserve did. And so John Fitzgerald Kennedy wanted to do something about it. So he signed certain documents that would reverse the war in Vietnam. He wanted to bring the boys home and get us out of these entangling alliances overseas that was destroying the United States. 5 days after he signed that, he was to make a public appearance in Dallas, Texas. I'll never forget that day as I was sitting eating lunch at a Steak and Shake, Morgan Ford and Kings Highway in South St. Louis, Missouri. And they began to announce the president has been shot. Over and over, it went on for hours. The president has been shot. It's like the whole nation went numb. And then the Warren Commission, who was a 33rd degree Freemason, a part of the Illuminati, headed up the investigation. It just so happens one of the greatest Freemasonry centers is Dallas, Texas. The head of the police department was a 33rd degree Mason. The cover-up began. Over 200 witnesses who said the Warren Commission did not even put their statements in the report have died mysteriously. There was a conspiracy. Many, many years later, because of pressure from the public and Congress, and because of the lawsuit brought by the Louisiana Attorney General, and was the only person that ever brought a lawsuit concerning the assassination of John F. Kennedy. They said probably there was a conspiracy. You know, there had been at least 3 presidents of the United States between 1820 until the death of Lincoln, all opposed international bankers creating a central bank in the United States. There were attempts on 3 of their lives. 2 of them succeeded, 1 did not. Assassinations. John F. Kennedy was assassinated by international bankers and their Central Intelligence Agency of the United States of America. All the facts are in, the truth has been known, but the national media would never tell you these things. Did you realize also that in the Bible where it says that in the last days, and certainly we are because all the signs are here, every single one of the signs in the Bible, it says we're in the last days. It says there will be traitors. There was a man who lived. He wanted a new world order. He became president of the United States. As one portion leading toward merging the United States into a one world government and losing our sovereignty, one person signed into law in 1972. This was Richard Nixon. Executive Order number 11,647 on February 10th, 1972, where it broke the United States of America down into 10 federal regions, preparing for the day when they would do away with all states. And they would create new nations out of these states that will be eliminated. I have a picture right before me as I speak of the 10 divisions broken down. Texas is in the 6th division, along with Louisiana, Arkansas, New Mexico, and Oklahoma. It's to become a separate nation when the New World Order comes into being. The Federal Reserve bankers have already declared it. They want it to happen. They have already passed law in the United States. It's called State Department Publication number 72-77, where it says that we will disarm this nation in 3 stages. Has it just been announced May 12th and 13th of the year 2005 and the 14th that there will now be 180 additional military bases that will go defunct? They will be closed down with thousands upon thousands of individuals losing their jobs. Did we realize that this is all a part of State Department Publication 7277? People who have sworn oaths to uphold the Constitution of the United States. Then in secret, they're passing laws when they get into position to do so, to deliver us to a one-world government, the loss of our freedom, the loss of our Constitution, the loss of our Bill of Rights, and now they're beginning an attack upon Christianity within the military. They're starting with a Naval Academy, Air Force Academy, where now those individuals, 90% of those that are in the military academies, claim to be Christians. Now they're forcing them to stop trying to proselyte within the military. They're putting a gag order upon them. This nation was built upon Christian biblical principles. Every single state government, and the federal government's constitutions, every one of them were based upon biblical principles, and they acknowledge our Lord Jesus Christ, and in the year of our Lord when they were established. Even some of them go so far as to say anyone who holds office must be a Christian to protect Christian America against those that want to destroy it. But do we also realize that traitors have been setting themselves in position where they could set forth the nations that will patrol the United States when it is merged into an all-powerful world government? I have before me right here a map. This was brought forward way back in 1954. It is still the official map of the United Nations, that when world government occurs, what nations will send military to other nations to patrol it. We couldn't have our own military in America. Would they shoot our own citizens? Not very likely. So how have they broken down the United States of America? South of the Mason-Dixon line, which is the Bible Belt of America, communist Russian troops. On the west part of the United States will be the Irish. And then south of the Mason-Dixon line, right on down into Mexico, will be Chinese Mongolian communist troops. In the northeast will be communist Colombian and Venezuelan troops. And Belgium, which is a big one-world government country. And then in Canada, there will be communist Mongolian, Russian troops, and German troops. All of this is going to affect the United States of America because in legal terms, all of this has already been passed and has never been rescinded. And here we are, Christian America, the target, the final target for international communism, They said that they would surround us. They've done it with Cuba. They've done it with Mexico. Vicente Fox has been seen on the stage in Cuba with Fidel Castro hugging him. And he wants to promote the communist free trade program so that all goods and services can go freely into another nation. When they have wages of $1.16 an hour, $1.30 an hour, hours are $15, where's the manufacturers going to go to get the cheap labor? So they are destroying our nation. It's all pre-programmed. It's been laid down since the early 1920s, 30s, 40s, and updated as time went on. But there are some amazing facts that are occurring about our borders in America. President Reagan once said that if we cannot control our own borders, we will not be a sovereign nation. Look what's happening all over southern Texas, all the way across New Mexico, Arizona, and California. There's already been 9 hospitals declared bankruptcy in Southern California because of illegal aliens coming into the country. They got free medical aid while Americans have to pay for it. And so it's bankrupting hospital after hospital. It's creating a crisis that's unknown, ever been known before in America. As Lou Dobbs of CNN said, if we don't get active in fighting this massive attack on our nation's borders, we will soon lose our culture, our heritage, our language. And haven't they already compromised? And now they have both Hispanic and American or English. You know, we speak a foreign language too. We speak English. But not the high crown English. And then we'll eventually lose the American way of life that we have known. It will be very shocking when these things happen. Most Americans don't know that over 300,000 illegal aliens who were ordered deported in the year 2004 before a federal judge are still in the country because they simply ignored their deportation orders and disappeared into the crowd. They can't be found. That's 300,000. There's over 11 to 15 million that have come in. The Department of Justice's Office of the Inspector General did not find any evidence that our Immigration Service is even capable of locating visa violators that are still in our country. And many, many of those are from the Middle East. Many of those were on the list, the watch list for terrorists. They can't locate them. They've admitted it. The INS was actually holding Mohammed Atta, the terrorist in charge of the 9/11 attack in America. They were holding him in custody when he tried to enter the country on an improper visa. But he was let go anyway, even though it was improper. What's wrong with enforcing the laws? You drive down with a license plate that is not fixed properly, they'll give you a ticket for it. They enforce it against us. Why not enforce it against those that come into the country illegally? The reason? They want America overrun so that we'll lose our culture, so that we'll lose control of our borders. There is a program to all this madness that we see in the world. There is a plan. And it is real, and the Bible says there will be traitors in the last days. Those traitors will cause us to lose our freedoms. All the 9/11 terrorists had Social Security numbers. They were legal. They obtained them in legal ways. The Census Bureau estimated that more than 115,000 Middle Easterners alone are living in the United States illegally. and they're pouring over the border, the Mexican border. One of the terrorists who attacked the World Trade Center way back in 1993 was granted amnesty by one of our nation's many amnesty programs for illegal aliens. His thanksgiving for that was, "I'll blow your World Trade Building up." Thankfully, only several hundred were injured and not many killed, about 6. Many states continue to give driver's license to illegal immigrants without even asking a single question. You might say, what does all this have to do with Bible prophecy? The Bible does say that there will be a scattering of the holy people, the scattering of the power, and the word power is used. Economic power, military power, political power, and eventually religious power. We will no longer be the greatest nation on the face of the earth. Notice what some of our forefathers said. Remember, one of the hallmarks of the day would be traitors. The Second Amendment is a perfect example. Our federal government now, because the United Nations says that all countries should be disarmed, wants only the military to have guns and citizens disarmed. There was a court trial right here in the state of Texas with a doctor, and this is what was brought forth. They said, yes, they wanted only the National Guard and the military to have the right to bear arms. But what did our forefathers say concerning this? And it's very important that we understand how America is being dissolved before our eyes. Here's what George Washington said, quote, "Firearms stand next in importance to the Constitution itself. They are the American people's liberty teeth and keystone under independence." End of quote. So he knew there would be traitors who would come in. He knew the history of Europe well. That's why they said don't get involved with European politics. Don't get involved in entangling alliances with the European nations. They'll only destroy America. Here's what James Madison had to say. Quote, "Americans have the right and advantage of being armed, unlike the citizens of other countries whose governments are afraid to trust the people with arms." End of quote. Thomas Jefferson said this, quote, "The strongest reason for the people to retain the right to keep and bear arms is, at last resort, to protect themselves against tyranny in government." End of quote. And there was an article that came out in a magazine, and it's a very enlightening article concerning the Second Amendment. How the government of the United States did research and went in and found that it is a fallacy that our forefathers even suggested that only the military could have arms. They even said, and this is the official documents of the United States government, but the federal government, those who are traitors, do not want you to know this. But they said the First Amendment was a right given so that we could guarantee traitors would never take over the government of the United States. Tyranny could never occur in America. That was the reason. Keep the population armed. The Associated Press on February 10th, 2005 noted that it was Kofi Annan, who was the head of the United Nations, a Secretary General, presented a statement. They published it over the Associated Press wires. He called, quote, "an apocalyptic warning." This is what Annan said. It has to do with the world and nuclear weapons that are owned by terrorists. Annan went on to say, and I'm quoting, "I urge the European Union and the United States to work more closely as the backbone of a new world order in the 21st century." End of quote. I've been warning America by radio and television and our magazine for 25 years that a new world order was coming. People laughed me to scorn until all of a sudden President Bush in 1990 and 1991 began to use the term openly. All of a sudden apologies began to come. They're working for a new world order. That new world order will not be pleasant for Christians. We know that Bill Clinton is actively seeking the position of United Nations Secretary General. He wants to be the supreme leader of a one-world government. That's his goal. He's a far leftist. Leftist means communist. Recently, former U.S. Senator Jesse Helms, who is a very ultra-conservative from North Carolina, who served 5 times in the Senate, said that one of his greatest fears is that Bill Clinton would become head of the United Nations. Jesse Helms said, and I quote, "I'm sure you might agree that putting a left-wing, undisciplined, and ethically challenged former president of the United States into a position of such power would be a tragic mistake." End of quote. That was the Associated Press, February 1st, 2005, by a Mr. Paul Noel. The world is a very unstable place right now as we're looking for Bible prophecy to come to a close. As we're looking for the emergence of what all religious organizations that have any inkling of what Bible prophecy is, they call the Antichrist, would come on the scene. The giant nation of Red China has announced that they will use non-peaceful means to retain control of Taiwan, a renegade state. Red China has become a superpower within itself, economically first, and they're building militarily now, and they are going to challenge America and the Asiatic Rim. The British Broadcasting Corporation News said that China has overtaken the United States in the consumption of agricultural and industrial goods, and that now we will have problems with oil and gas prices because Red China is importing and making deals with countries that produce petroleum, because they have over 1,200,000,000 people when we have about 290 million people in this country. They want their share, and they want to come into the 21st century. And so when you compare the United States with Red China, early in the 20th century, the United States of America had the greatest trade surplus of any nation in the world. Now we're the greatest debtor nation in the world. The Federal Reserve System is the one who puts the pressure on to continue in our federal government allowing these socialistic, communistic programs to take place to weaken and undermine the United States of America. Red China is going to be one of the most dangerous nations in the future. And the Bible will tell us that, not by the name of China, but it will tell us that in no uncertain terms. Remember, we're still talking about traitors in the last days so far. I'd like to give you just a little inkling of something that's about to come on the scene. This is from Army Times, March 24th, the year 2005. The headline is, "Mideast duty for U.S. troops may include Israel." Well, we know the Bible talks a lot about the Middle East. and about how Judah, the tribe of Judah, which is only one of the 12 tribes of Israel, would go back and begin to occupy the land again, and it will be nothing but trouble all the time for them, right up to the very return of Jesus Christ. But it says here that United States, American troops may go in to Israel. They may, with the NATO forces, set up a partition between Jerusalem and the Arabs, the Palestinian non-state. What does the Bible say about surrounding Jerusalem? When you see Jerusalem surrounded with armies, know that the desolation thereof is near. Bible is coming alive in the 21st century. Listen to some of the plans that have been laid down in the past, and you tell me if you can see any of this right now. Here is a man by the name of V.I. Lenin, first ruthless dictator of international communism. Communism was established by the Illuminati. The Illuminati worships Lucifer. Oh, they're religious. They just want you to think they're atheist, because they had to set up a seen enemy of the Western world of Christianity. So they set up atheism versus Christianity. Here's what V.I. Lenin said: "We will sell the Western businessmen the rope with which we will hang them." Does that sound like communism is becoming a friend? When they said they're going to deceive us and they will end up buying from us and they will sell to us, but they will end up hanging America and the West. V.I. Lenin made another statement, quoting, "The capitalists of the world and their governments, in the pursuit of the conquest of the Soviet market, we want to sell you some goods, China. We want to sell you some goods, Russia. Will close their eyes to the indicated higher reality, and thus will turn into deaf, mute, and blind men. They will extend credit, that's loans, in giving us the materials and technology we lack. They will restore our military industry, indispensable for our future victorious attacks on our suppliers. In other words, they will labor for the preparation for their own suicide." End of quote. What has American businesses been doing? Over 400 are now manufacturers in Red China that once stood on the landscape of America. And we're there giving them the dollars to build their military machine. We're doing the same thing all over the world. Here is another statement by Dmitry Manulyutsky of the Lenin School of Political Warfare. Quote, "War to the hilt between communism and capitalism is inevitable. Today, of course, we're not strong enough to attack. That was back in the 1930s. But listen to what he said, and then we'll bring it up to the modern era. Our time will come. To win, we shall need the element of surprise. The bourgeoisie, that's us, America, will have to be put to sleep. So we shall begin by launching the most spectacular peace movement on record." They allowed East Germany to merge with West Germany. So the Berlin Wall came tumbling down. They pretended to let their 10 satellite countries go free. The most spectacular peace movement on record. There will be electrifying overtures and unheard of concessions. Yes, we're going to become a market country, just like America. The capitalist countries stupid and decadent. This is what they think about us. Will rejoice to cooperate to their own destruction. They will leap at another chance to be friends. As soon as their guard is down, and we're closing another 180 military bases. We have depleted and burned, incinerated over 2,500 nuclear missiles. We think Russia is our friend because we've been propagandized. What did he say? As soon as their guard is down, we will smash them with our clenched fist. They're biding their time. They're waiting. Here's what Leonid Brezhnev said way back in 1973, a little closer to today. Our aim is to gain control of the two great treasure houses on which the West, America, depends. The energy treasure house of the Persian Gulf. Well, who's allied with all these countries that we're now going to war with? Russia. Russia has been supplying them up to 3 days before President Bush declared war and invaded Iraq. The current war. And then minerals treasure house of Central and Southern Africa. So what have they done? Overthrown every one of those countries. They overthrew South African government. And Nelson Mandela, who had been in prison 27 years because documents were found with his signature on them, stating that his goal and purpose of the African National Congress was to overthrow South Africa and install a communist government. Our own State Department forced South African government to release him, and he became president of that country, a communist, and now they have converted it to a socialist communist country. But they have the treasure house. That's where the gold was found, the gold mines, the diamond mines. Most Americans would not believe it if they were to hear a statement as late as 1987 upholding every statement I just read. But Mikhail Gorbachev, who's sitting out there in our former military base in San Francisco called the Presidio, here's what he said when he was head of Russia. Quote, "Comrades, do not be concerned about all you will hear about glasnost and perestroika." That's internalizing, internal changes within the communist world, and the outward openness to the West, and that democracy is coming to Russia in the coming years. These are primarily for outward consumption. There will be no significant internal change within the Soviet Union other than for cosmetic purposes to fool the West. Our purpose is to disarm the Americans and let them fall asleep. Sounds just like Dmitry Manulusky to me, right out of their political warfare school. We want to accomplish 3 things. 1, we want the Americans to withdraw conventional forces from Europe. What is now being proposed by our government in Washington, D.C.? Close down our bases in Germany, bring them home, or send them to the Middle East. Number 2, we want them to withdraw nuclear forces from Europe. If we come home, the nuclear missiles will too. And number 3, we want the Americans to stop proceeding with the Strategic Defense Initiative. That's what Ronald Reagan wanted, and it was shelved. We have no way to stop one single missile from coming over Canada, over the North Pole, and hitting America. We have not one single missile because they've closed down the missile sites in North Dakota. Not one missile that would stop an invasion of Chinese, Cuban, or Russian missiles coming into America. This is what Gorbachev said in November of 1987 before the Politburo, and that's like our Congress. This explains what's happening in the world today. But there is something that is even more interesting. Here is a newspaper article right out of Pravda, their state-owned newspaper. I'll just mention a little of it because I think it's so important because of Ezekiel chapter 38 in the Bible. It says the communist world is going to come upon the mountains of Israel, not little tiny Judah in the Middle East, but Israel, the lost 10 tribes, the ones who accepted Christianity in Jesus Christ. Here's what he said in that Pravda article. It is obvious today that the war in Iraq is not the kind of war that the American administration was intended to have. The strong resistance that Iraqi troops showed, Iraqi ABM systems and anti-tank facilities turned out to be an unexpected surprise for Americans. Why was this an unexpected surprise? They're going to explain right in their own newspaper. As the American administration believed, the war turned out to be different on account of the fact that the Russian defense industry delivered anti-tank missiles to Iraq by third-party countries. As it was said, the Russian defense industry also supplied Iraq with night vision devices and unique anti-missile systems. The U.S. administration determined that Russia delivered those weapons to Iraq several days before the war was launched. The official note of protest on the part of the U.S. Department of State was based on these illegal deliveries. The note of protest was handed over to the Russian ambassador to the United States, Yuri Yushakov. So America protested. They knew that these military devices were sent by Russia through a third country into Iraq before the war ever started. Our federal government knew that when we sent our boys into Iraq, death and mayhem was going to occur. They knew it in advance. The Pravda article went on and said the Russian government did not ignore U.S. threats in the form of certain statements to punish Russia for arms delivery. In other words, they're saying our government, our State Department told Russia clearly, you will be punished for sending this military equipment to Iraq so that it will not make the invasion go simply. And so now Russia has determined, according to this article, and I'm not going through all of it, but according to this article, immediately Russia started military exercises. That's when they unveiled that they had brought forth the most modern, sophisticated nuclear force in the history of the world, and it was in the newspapers because I got a clipping of it. And they wanted to show America that you better not invade Russia. We'll have a surprise for you. All this has to do with Bible prophecy that I'm working toward finishing today. So it was that Russia said, you better not come because we'll have surprises for you. America knows that it is being surrounded. America knows that it's turning the world against us. President George W. Bush is a member of the Skull and Bones Secret Society working for world government. They have been trying for years to get around the Constitution and to get rid of the Bill of Rights. What better way to do it than to turn the entirety of the world against us And that's what the Pravda newspaper article said. They even went so far as to say that Europe would not come to the aid of America because they want to become a superpower themselves. Newsweek, June 21st, had an article. It talked about two Army counterintelligence agents showed up at the University of Texas Law School. And it told about how they demanded to see the roster and that there were Islamic students there. And they wanted to find who they were and question them. This was military. The government finally had to admit that, yes, they had overstepped their bounds because of the Posse Comitatus Act that said the military cannot occupy the United States. It cannot be turned on its own citizens, and yet here it was, in total disregard of the Posse Comitatus Act. Did the Bible say there would be traitors in the last days? Yes, it did. It's not pleasant for me to have to stand here and report these things, but they're true. Our federal government and our president, Secretary of State, the former Secretary of State, Colin Powell, gave their reasoning for going into Iraq. Every one of those reasons have been dismantled one by one. Most people who read newspapers have read Charlie Reese articles. He's a syndicated columnist. And he had an article. It was entitled, "Remember, This is an Unjust War," talking about Iraq. He went on through here and he showed that it was an unjust act because the Iraqi government did not have the military power to threaten nor attack the United States of America. He went through here and showed in this article how the United States Japan attacked the United States unprovoked, and how Germany attacked Poland and other countries in Europe unprovoked. We condemn them, and yet here is America becoming the world's policeman. And all of a sudden, under President George W. Bush, we can attack any nation that we want to with no reason, only if they do not agree with us politically. And he went through this article showing that Russia, China, and India all have nuclear capabilities. And India and Russia has nuclear weapons. And China has them too, but they just don't openly state so. He asked, do those countries love us? No, they don't. He said that all the countries of the world, and this is just exactly what Pravda said, and he confirmed it. And Charlie Reese is a very conservative person. And he said, do you and I think that these countries love us? Do you think that even the Europeans will not try to weaken our global monopoly on the use of force? Yes, they will. America is getting in over its head. We don't even recognize what we're doing, or maybe they do recognize it. You and I, the public, do not recognize it. As we watch the intrigue in the Middle East unfold, and we hear more about wars developing on the Syrian border, possible already CIA infiltration into Iran, we can clearly see the precision of Bible scriptures. It's called prophecy. Recently, Vice President Dick Cheney said, and I quote, "You look around the world at potential trouble spots, Iran is right at the top of the list," end of quote. That was found in the Iowa Tribune, January 21st, 2005. There have been rumblings about Iran being next. But in Revelation chapter 13, verse 1, verse 4, and then verse 7, it says this: "And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast," that's a government, "rise up out of the sea." And if you want to know what the sea is, it's humanity. Revelation 17:15 says so. It's the peoples, nations, and languages of the world. Then the last part of verse 4 says, "Who is like unto the beast," this government that is rising. Who is able to make war with him? So they're trying to establish a government that will be all powerful. Will it be accomplished? How is it going to be accomplished? Verse 7 says that it was given unto him to make war with the saints. So it's going to be a blasphemous system, and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds, tongues, and nations. It's coming. They're preparing the way step by step. They don't do anything. As Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, nothing in the political happens unless it was planned. The war in the Middle East was planned to bring about a result. Leviticus chapter 26, verse 19, and then verse 32 says this. The first part of verse 19 says, "I will break the pride of your power." Power can be military, it can be economic. The economic power of America is being broken. The military power, with our engagement in the Middle East and our troops scattered to 100 different countries, and we can't even defend ourselves if a missile came across the border. Our military power is being broken, even though it would be denied by our military personnel. Verse 32, the last section of the verse says, "And your enemies which dwell therein shall be astonished at it." That's what's happening to us. So we have enemies. And it seems so simple that Americans fall for everything that comes out of Washington, D.C. But since our states' rights, our 10th Amendment, is gone, our states cannot stand up to the federal government, or there is no desire by those in government, state government positions to do so. Look what it says in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 37 and verse 43. It says, "And you shall become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations, whether the Lord will lead you." Do the nations of the world hate us now? Attacking Iraq has turned all the world against us, even our northern neighbor Canada. Verse 43. The stranger, and when you look that word up, it means alien, foreigner, that is within you shall get up above you very high, and you shall come down very low. The international bankers are foreigners. They now own the country, lock, stock, and barrel. They just haven't told us yet. Look what it says in Luke 21, verse 20, talking about the Middle East and Jerusalem. "And when you shall see Jerusalem compassed," or surrounded, "with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh." This is one of the signs that Jesus gave, that the end of the age is coming. The end is coming. I had talked already about China and Russia and how they had said the world was turning against America, how they were building nuclear weapons. Russia has already displayed theirs and said that they are now the superpower of the world, not America, as far as nuclear weapons is concerned. Look what it says in Daniel 11, verse 40 to 45. Are we ever going to have a problem with Russia? Are we going to have a problem with China? What did the Illuminati say way back in 1871, before communism was ever founded? Giuseppe Mazzini, world revolutionary leader of the Illuminati, and Albert Pike, religious leader, who lived in Little Rock, Arkansas, and he's enshrined 13 blocks from the White House. They said there had to be many revolutionary wars, and they had to be 3 world wars. We had World War I, World War II. They said the Third World War would pit atheism against Christianity. This is a Christian nation. It was declared so February 29th, 1892, in a 9-0 decision of the Supreme Court. Russia declared itself atheist, but the ones who control it worship Lucifer, Satan the devil. In Daniel 11, verse 40 to 45, and at the time of the end of the age, shall the king of the south push at him. Him, who is him? The king of the north. The king of the north used to be the Roman Empire. Then it gave way to NATO, which the United States is a part of that alliance. The king of the south were the Arab countries. Verse 41, he shall enter also into the glorious land. That's Palestine, where Jerusalem is located. And many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape out of his hand: Edom and Moab, Turkey. And the chief of the children of Ammon, that's Jordan. Ammon, Jordan is the capital. Verse 42, he shall stretch forth his hand also upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. They sponsor terrorism. Verse 43, but he shall have power over the treasures of gold and of silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt. And the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall be at his step. Ethiopia was overthrown for communism. The latter part of the 1970s, Libya, with Gaddafi, head of Libya, has been in the communist camps and even had up to 16 to 23 terrorist training camps on their soil at one time. So when he gets so far, all of a sudden something is going to happen. Verse 44, but tidings out of the east. Take a ruler, go from Jerusalem, Palestine, straight east. What do you find? Beijing, China, the capital of communist China. And tidings will come out of the north. Take that same ruler, turn it from Jerusalem and go straight north, and there's Moscow, the capital of Russia. But these tidings from the east, communist China, and the north, communist Russia, shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go with great fury to destroy and utterly make away many. In other words, there's been a double cross. The Illuminati's plan to bring the communist world against the United States of America, the West, Christian West. Somebody sees it, and he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain, and none shall help him. So the rest of the world is not going to come to his aid, the king of the north. This appears to be none other than George Walker Bush. It appears that way at this point. Why would this happen to America? Why? Because we as a whole has turned our back upon God. Not every person, as a whole. Just like the communists said, they wanted to get our young people, their minds off God and religion and turn it to sex, so that they would get them away from religious activities and moral standards. In Daniel 12, the latter part of verse 7, it tells us when all this thing is going to be accomplished, that it shall be for a time, that's a year, times, that's 2 years and a half, so that's 3.5 years. And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power, that's the economic, military, political power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. It'll be over with. National captivity for America. The beast will rule supreme. The mark of the beast will be instituted. But there's other things that are going to become very frightening as we see the last days approach. Right now, Americans and all the religious people of this country are sitting there biding their time. They've turned to materialism. They've looked away from God. They don't think anything could ever happen to America. After all, we've got 3,000 of ocean, 3,000 miles of ocean on one side, 6,000 miles on the other side. Who could attack us? Communist China now controls both ends of the Panama Canal. They have missiles. They could send 18 missiles with 10 nuclear tips on each one of them and hit the largest 180 cities in America from Panama. Are we under siege? Yes, we are. Geologists have now discovered, and this was found in the Radar News, February 21st, 2005, that a major earth plate has been split into two pieces. The Indo-Australian plate, which holds up both Asia and India, are now separated. As the earth continues, more and more volcanoes erupt, and we've seen a rash of them. On February 23rd, 2005, one happened in Alaska. On March 9th, it was Mount St. Helens in the state of Washington. It erupted and sent ash and soot into the air 30,000 feet. The next day, March the 10th, 2005, Mexico's volcano of fire erupted. It spewed orange, all lava, all over the area. That was from an AP, February 25th, 2005. News release. Then on March 4th, 2005, several earthquakes began to happen off the coast of Oregon. This wasn't just a single earthquake, this was many, many earthquakes, numbering into the thousands. Scientists rushed to that area from Oregon State University and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Researchers said, and I'm quoting, thousands of small earthquakes are happening just off the western coast of the United States because the seafloor is spreading. Haven't we said for years that California one day and maybe Washington and Oregon would drop off into the ocean with all of their population? We suspect what happened was that magma pushed up into the crust and the lava may have broken the surface, end of quote. And then on WBEV radio, March 2nd, 2005, out of Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, it said that emergency government officials have been warning that tsunamis might become a possibility and wipe out the coast of the United States of America. Wipe out the coast. 52% of the population of this country lives in the coastal areas. And the Bible does say in Isaiah 59:18, I'll not turn there, but it does talk about the islands and having troubles. And the islands, and you look it up in the Strong's Concordance, it means coastal cities. Doesn't have to just be an island the way we know an island completely surrounded with water. but it means the coastlands. We know that there is, because of archaeological digs in the Middle East, in Samaria, they had charts showing that there were 9 planets identically to the ones we know of today that circulated around our sun. And there was yet a 10th planet. And that 10th planet, they showed, had a huge elliptical orbit that went way out into space and circled around a dead sun, and then came back through the atmosphere, our inner space between the planets, and it caused disruption every time it came through. Came through about every 3,600 years. And so right here is an article right out of the U.S. News and World Report where it shows this elliptical orbit, and it actually says Planet X, question mark. X is 10. It's asking, is there really a 10th planet? Every time that particular planet would come through our solar system, it would create earthquakes, volcanoes. It would disrupt the land surface. Some continents would sink, others would rise, and mountains would be formed in other places. It would deplete populations every time it came through. Could this be biblical? Could anything such as that, in the wildest fetch of your imagination, could it be found in the Bible that something like this, whether it is that or not, we don't know yet, but is it going to happen? In Luke chapter 21, verse 7, then the first part of 11 and verse 25 and 26, here's what it says. The disciples, when they left the temple, they asked him, saying, Master, but when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign when these things shall come to pass? They had asked, what's going to be the sign of the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple and of your second coming? The first part of verse 11 says, and great earthquakes shall be in various places. Verse 25 and 26 has this to say. And remember, this is Jesus, our Savior. He's never wrong. Never once. And there shall be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars and upon the earth, distress of nations with perplexity. Take your own Strong's Concordance. Look up the word perplexity. It means no way out. Something is going to happen where all nations of the world are going to believe that there is coming human annihilation. That's what it means. There is no way of escape. The sea and waves roaring. Tsunamis because of earthquakes. Men's hearts failing them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. Now that's a powerful statement, but our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, the only Savior of this world, made the statements. Every statement he's ever made in Bible prophecy that was in the Old Testament that he inspired, all of those have come to pass, right, leading right into the last days, our days right now. But Jeremiah 30, verse 4 to 7, even adds credence to this. And these are the words that the Lord spake concerning Israel and concerning Judah. For thus says the Lord, we've heard a voice of trembling, of fear, not of peace. Ask now and see whether a man does travail with child. Now we know it's abnormal for a man to give birth to a child. But he goes on and says, why do I see every man with his hands on his loins? He's holding his stomach. We've already seen back there in Luke that their hearts would fail them. There would be fear because of what they saw coming upon the earth. And he said, why do I see every man's hands on his loins as a woman in travail, and all faces are turned into paleness? We're going to have the greatest day and the greatest convention of pale-faced people in the history of the world. When this comes and this happens, it says, alas, that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. Here's the greatest time in human history about to come upon us. It's going to be so devastating that everybody is going to fear for his or her life, but they do not know it today. Churches today want to preach nothing but sweet, soft things. How to get rich and how to prosper, instead of what the Word of God Almighty says. Other things that have been happening in the world today are not very pleasant also. There is a scripture in the Bible I'm going to read in just a moment that says that Jesus Christ is going to have to return to restore this earth. Restore it to the way it originally was, or else there'll be no flesh if he doesn't intervene. One of those items that is causing such horror in the world today is Agent Orange. There is an Agent Orange committee that has been studying for years the effects on our boys that came back from Vietnam, where Agent Orange was dropped directly onto them. They have found in that report that the children that have been born, most of them to those Vietnam veterans, have had all kind of deformities. They've even discovered now that up to 13 generations of genetic interference by Agent Orange can occur. It would take 13 generations and for this Agent Orange effects of defects in their children to be cleared out of their system. We know about the nuclear bombs, all the nations that have them. We know about the chemical, biological agents. Saddam Hussein used them on the Kurds. We know of all of these things that could wipe out every person on planet Earth. They're right before us. They're in front of us because the day of the Lord is coming. The last days. It's right ahead of us. But notice what it says in Acts chapter 3, verse 18 to 21. But those things which God before had shown by the mouth of all of his prophets, that Christ should suffer, he has so fulfilled. He came into the world, he died, so that he could reconcile the world back to the Father. Repent you therefore and be converted, that your sins may be blotted out, when the times of refreshing shall come from the presence of the Lord. Why is there going to be a necessity for the times of refreshing? And he shall send Jesus Christ, which before was preached unto you, whom the heavens must receive until. That word until is major. Until the times of restitution of all things. The word restitution means to restore to a former estate. Jesus Christ will have to come back to this earth because it's going to be in such shambles, such misery, such heartache and sorrow because of what man is doing to himself. We know about the Patriot One Act and the USA Patriot II Act that was waiting in the wings, already written and denied by our federal government, that would totally create a dictatorship in America. But here's a USA article, and it says the headline, "Trust Me, just doesn't fly." And they go into detail as to what some of the Patriot Act did. Said that it allows secret searches of any home or business by federal agents with no warrants. Why? Because the Constitution was gone March 9th, 1933. They didn't even have to notify the peoples that owned the home where they went in to make searches. The USA News newspaper said it authorizes collection of personal information from libraries, businesses, medical providers, and you are forbidden, the personnel who work there are forbidden to even tell you or me that they're asking for information about us. Then it said the law defines domestic terrorism so broadly that it could be applied to anyone that they wanted it to. And there are articles that have already appeared showing that it's being applied to private citizens. Here's an article from the Bristol Herald-Courier in Tennessee entitled, "More Tennesseans Are Being Subjected to Federal Wiretaps." Dateline, Chattanooga, Tennessee. Federal authorities are taking advantage of the Patriot Act to place more wiretaps in Tennessee. Taking advantage. They're misusing a law that they rushed through Congress because of the fear of terrorism. And they've constantly used the terrorist alert to keep the American people in panic so that they would accept anything the lawmakers said. And little by little, they're stripping all of our rights. This is called traitors, the first scripture that I read today. Also, as far away as our brothers in Britain, they are now introducing an identity card. You can't travel without it if it goes through. Now, where did this article come from? The most prestigious economic magazine published in the world, called The Economist. It actually has a picture of the Prime Minister, not the Prime Minister, but the head of one of the departments over there in government. Identity card with barcodes on it. And then the British flag showing what country they belong to. And right here in America, states' rights, according to this article, underlying the issue of license bill, but they've already passed it. They've now made it a federal law where the driver's license will become the identity card. 100-0 in the Senate. The House still has to pass it. But it will become law because they are legally, one step at a time, creating a dictatorship in America. Just like they did in Germany with Adolf Hitler. They laid the groundwork in advance so that it became legal. And within 5 days after all the law had already been passed, Hitler became dictator of Germany. Parliament dissolved. What will happen in America? Do you think they want to track you and me everywhere we go? Do you think they want to know where they can find Christian dissenters or any other dissenter? When this world government and the mark of the beast is implemented, and especially since the identity card is going through the Federal Reserve System,
You'll be forbidden to buy anything if the state you live in does not adopt this program, because the Federal Reserve System will forbid you from buying anything, transacting business. Yes, they want to track you everywhere. To be exact, there's now a bill in Congress that wants to be approved so that they use the excuse of sex offenders. What have we been seeing on the news lately? Sex offenders killing little girls, kidnapping them. This bill will allow sex offenders to be tracked by the global positioning, or the global satellite positioning system called GPS. Then, since every law they ever passed, they expanded who would be next. Not just sex offenders, every prisoner. And then who would be next after that? Anyone that they considered might be a terrorist, so they could track his every move. And then when Christianity is declared an enemy of the state, you and I, do these things sound so far-fetched? You read the book 1984, required reading for me when I entered college, back when they were making rocks. And it sounds exactly like that book. Then here's an article, and attached to it is a little deal, a barcode. A dime-sized chip would be there that if the law passes in the state of Texas, every automobile will have an identification on the windshield where they can be tracked by this global satellite positioning system. Every person that drives an automobile. Then there is another problem for Americans. Remember the rush from 9/11 to get the legislation passed, the Patriot Act, that stripped us of our 4th, 5th, 1st, 6th, 10th, 14th Amendment rights? Now the reorganization within government that created the largest part of our government today, Homeland Security, they have now started giving grants. Now, where did the money come from? The Federal Reserve, which is illegal according to the Constitution. But since the Federal Reserve has now, under the bankruptcy laws, been given America to pay back the loans, they create more money. Now Homeland Security is giving grants to create a network of cameras for every city in America. And they're starting with the first one in Baltimore, Maryland. Not one American will be able to go anywhere without being viewed on camera with a chip tracking your car. And if they have their way, a chip under your right hand or on your forehead, so that they will be able to track you everywhere you go. Bible prophecy is happening. It's upon us. There is no time for one of us to look back. We made an agreement with Jesus Christ when we went down into that watery grave of baptism. It was a covenant, and that covenant was ratified in His blood, that we would be loyal, we would be faithful, we would follow Him wherever He led. This means if this world government that is rising is going to create problems for you and me, and if for some reason He does not step in to alleviate those problems, we must remain faithful unto the end. My final comments for today is I want to review the possibility of escaping the hardcore persecution of true Christians. When the climax of all Bible prophecy is ushered onto the world scene with a beast and the false prophet, the world government that will hate Christianity and make war upon it, and then they will worship Lucifer, Satan. In Luke 21, verse 36, Jesus Christ, at the conclusion of his talking about the signs for which we could tell that he would be coming, said, "Watch you therefore and pray always." Have an attitude of prayer everywhere you go. Why? That you put your name there. You are much loved by God the Father and Jesus. Jesus went out of his way to find you and select you to be one of his children, that you may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass and to stand before the Son of Man. Yes, stand faithful and loyal and dedicated, and understand for what purpose you are called. Notice in Revelation chapter 3, verse 7, and then verse 10 and 11. "And to the angel of the church in Philadelphia write, These things says he that is holy." That's Jesus. Now I'll drop down to verse 10 and 11. "Because," now this is a condition. A condition has been set. "Because you have kept the word of my patience." Now the Bible always interprets itself. What in the world is the word of my patience? Revelation 14:12 says, keeping the commandments, the 10 commandments of God, is what Jesus meant. His patience. "So because you have kept my patience, the commandments, I also will keep you from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world to try them that are upon the earth." I'll break the reading for a moment, where it says, "I will also keep you from." You can look up that word "from" in the unabridged dictionary. It means out of contact with. God is going to provide a safe haven for some who keep his way of life, will not compromise, will not go by the traditions of the world and become sinners and remain sinners. He is going to keep those people out of contact with the persecution, the deaths, the martyrdom of millions of Christians that don't even have a clue as to what's going on in the world today. And then he warned that church. He said, "Behold, I come quickly. Hold that fast which you have, that no man take your crown." God has opened the eyes of some people on planet Earth to know to obey him, to reverence his word, to live by every word of the Bible. If we don't, the inference is that no man take your crown. You and I can be replaced to become kings and priests, as Revelation 5, 9, and 10 says is our destiny, to rule on this earth, to teach people the true ways of God, and to finally bring peace, which this world has never known. God has called people for a destiny, for a purpose, for a reason. Notice he even continues in the book of Revelation to give some hope. Revelation 12, verse 12 to 17. "Therefore rejoice, you heavens, and you that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea." Well, why would he say woe to people that live on planet Earth? But the angels in heaven should rejoice. "For the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath." in the Christian community, they get it backwards. Satan's wrath is coming first, and the church will go through that wrath. God's wrath comes later, after the seventh trump, and the saints are changed to our new glorified body. Then the wrath of God will be poured out upon a God-defying world. Revelation 15 and 16 tell you that. Because he knows he has but a short time, yes, to deceive, to set up his world government, his mark of the beast. And when the dragon saw that he was cast into the earth, he persecuted the woman. The Bible in the book of Revelation has two women. One is a great church, a persecuting church, one that martyrs the true church. One sits in Rome. The other are scattered individuals all over the world. They come together where they can and when they can and call church services for those that are in a place where they can. But he's going to persecute this woman, this church, which brought forth the man-child. The church in the wilderness, ancient Israel, was converted to the church of the living God when the Holy Spirit was poured out and given to individuals. And to the woman was given two wings of a great eagle. You look back there and you see how God delivered Israel out of Egyptian bondage on the wings of eagles. Exodus 19, verse 4 and 5. But they walked every step of the way. But it just showed that it was a supernatural deliverance. And she's going to fly into the wilderness, into her place. Jesus is already preparing that place for when the last days, the last 3.5 years come. There will be a place where you and I and others, if we're faithful, will enter into it. Where she is nourished. Look that word up in the Greek Strong's Concordance. It means to fatten with food. Not to make us fat, but give us enriched food to save our body from dying. How long will it take? How long will we be there? Those who escape all of these things. For a time, times, and half a time, that's 3.5 years, from or out of contact with the face of the serpent. And the serpent cast out of his mouth waters. Now the Bible always interprets itself some other place in the Bible. Isaiah 59:19 shows that armies are like waters. So the armies of the New World Order will come at Christians. These people that are going to be delivered, that he might cause her to be carried away with a flood, or the armies, the military, and the earth. The word earth only has two meanings. That's all there is. Number one, the entire world. But we saw in Revelation 13:7 that the beast, this end time system, is going to have power over every nation, language, and tongue. The only other meaning for this word in the Greek language is region. So it would be a small region out of the whole globe. And the earth or region helped the woman. And the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood. That's the military, which the dragon cast out of his mouth. And the dragon, Revelation 12:9 says the dragon is Satan the devil, was wroth or angry with a woman. So what's Satan going to do when he can't get to those people that Jesus Christ said, I account you worthy to escape martyrdom, to escape prison camps, to escape asteroids coming into the atmosphere of this earth? You will live. What's he going to do to the rest of the Christian community? Notice, and went to make war with a remnant. That word is very interesting. It means the remaining ones, the ones who did not appear at a certain place. the remnant of her seed. And what does her seed do? Keep the commandments of God, the spiritual law of God, and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Brethren, it is very important to God that you are faithful unto the end. Why? Jesus went out of his way to inspire Matthew to write down a scripture. In Matthew 24, verse 21 and 22, "For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be." The worst events in all of human history is going to occur. And except those days should be shortened with Jesus intervening to begin to restore all things. There should no flesh be saved. And the Moffat translation says alive. But Jesus is coming. He's coming for a faithful group of individuals, because it says right here under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, "But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened." Jesus knows you. He knows you by name. He knows every thought that goes through your mind and my mind. He knows whether we're hypocrites or whether we're willing to obey everything the Bible says as we learn it. It will take great courage to stand and face the dark days that are ahead. But we can have encouragement, because Moses stood between two mountain ranges and the Red Sea in front of him. And he said, "Stand still and watch the salvation of the Lord." And I say, amen.